Yeah, figure that one out. There's a gremlin somewhere in the studio. It's 6 minutes now after 8 o'clock. Thanks for taking some time this morning for joining us on Top Story. The 14 people who were watching MSDNC last night were treated to this.
He paid $38 million, looks like $38 million in taxes. He took a big write-down of $103 million. More on that later. If you add up the lines for income, he made more than $150 million in that year. Mazel tov. We got these pages. We got this document today from a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist who's better on financial matters than almost anybody else in the business. His name is David K. Johnston. These pages turned up the other day in his mailbox.
That is from Rachel Maddow on MSDNC last night. She ballyhooed this throughout the day that she had Trump's tax returns and even wrote seriously in parentheses on her Twitter feed. So here you go, folks. This expectation. Now, she did drive people into the tent last night. There's no doubt about that. A lot of people who would never watch that program tuned in to see what this was all about. And then she holds up 2 pages from a tax return a dozen years ago. And you're thinking to yourself, huh? And it looked like the 1040 easy form that when I was first working, I was college age and first working, you had a 1-page form for those of us who were washing dishes part-time called the 1040 easy, and you would fill it out. And on this basis, we're supposed to condemn Donald Trump. Well, it looks like he made a lot of money. Money and making money happen to be a crime, Unless, of course, you're Rachel Maddow over here at MSDNC, and then making money's a good thing. The latest, if you have not heard it, is the reporter who claims to have uncovered these 2 pages. In other words, he uncovered them by opening up his email, and they happen to be there. They have egg on their faces. He's now saying, well, maybe Donald Trump sent me these pages. I don't know that, but, there's a good possibility Donald Trump sent them my way so that he could embarrass us and make we liberal media types look bad. Yeah, that must be what the real truth is. Because, as it turns out, and they doubted that Trump was a billionaire. Here's a guy who's making hundreds of millions of dollars in a year. So he well could be a billionaire. You make $100 million a year, and if you bank it, you are able to bank $100 million a year for 10 years, you would then be a billionaire. That's how that would work. So Donald Trump is making money more than most of us will ever see in our lifetimes, and media doubted that he was worth so much money. Then media said he didn't pay any taxes. And maybe some years he didn't, but for the year that MSDNC has obtained, he paid a quarter of his income in taxes, in just federal income tax. Federal. And living in New York City, he not only had a big state tax, New York City can't help itself, being a liberal bastion, there was a New York City tax as well. So he had, and if he's doing business in other countries, he's likely paying taxes in some of those places as well. And then in comparison, someone decided to take a look at what President Obama paid in taxes. Well, under 20% last year of his income went to taxes, federal income tax. Bernie Sanders, just 13%. So what are we supposed to look at here? I guess Maddow, her latest trick, she's going to be rummaging around the basement of Trump Tower looking for Al Capone's vault, which is about what this is comparable to. If you think back to Al Capone's vault and, oh gosh, it was Fox News. Well, he wasn't with Fox News at the time. It was Geraldo Rivera. Remember? They smashed into that vault in a basement in Chicago and found nothing. Maddow's comments within an hour were being addressed by Sean Hannity over at Fox News Channel. Take a listen.
NBC News in particular is on a political jihad against the president and his administration. And that is tonight's opening monologue. All right, tonight we've hit a new low in terms of privacy as we know it here in our country, and it should deeply concern all of you, the American people. Now, just a short time ago, one of the Trump-hating hosts over at NBC News, who is really one of the leaders of the alt-left propaganda, destroy Trump at all cost media, well, she got her hands on President Trump's 2 pages of his 2005 tax return. Now, in many ways, this should be troublesome to everybody, but also there are many, many legal questions that we'll get into tonight. For example, according to 26 U.S. Code 7213, quote, it shall be unlawful for any officer or employee of the United States or any person described in Section 6103 and officer or employee of any such person or any former officer or employee willfully to disclose to any person except as authorized in this title any return or return information.
So, what do you think? When does Trump derangement syndrome end? Or do we have to go through this a couple of times every week for the next 4 years or even 8 years where media trots something out like this and then media slinks away like the dog that you found that crapped on your carpet? Because that's what we have going on here. Every few days, media has this big exclusive, and media is going to tell us how Donald Trump is a crook and Donald Trump is hiding something, and then we get a result, and it's, hey, Donald Trump paid more in taxes than Barack Obama and Bernie Sanders. He paid more in taxes than Warren Buffett. He paid more in taxes than the parent company of MSDNC, Comcast. So what are we supposed to see here? Media doesn't like Donald Trump for one main reason. And I'm going to get into this a little later. I'm going to be talking about one of our Idaho state legislators in the next hour of the program and a comment he made yesterday. But for the same reason, media in Idaho doesn't like that particular legislator, who's an economist, I should point out. But we'll have more details on that story coming up. But for the very same reasons, media has its protected victim classes. And if you're in politics and you're a straight man, and you don't go around hugging, the local Islamists, and number 3, you're not a fellow traveler, then they're out to get you. That's simply what all of this is about. They're out to get you. And if media wonders why nobody any longer trusts it, then they sit around and say, well, if our newspaper went out of business, the folks here in this valley would have nothing at all to read, and you would be left out in the lurch and out in the cold. And mainstream media in Washington, what is it? The Washington Post now has a new slogan along the lines of, about darkness. In other words, Donald Trump is the darkness hiding what's going on behind the scenes. There's a reason nobody buys your baloney anymore. I had to clean that up a little bit. There's a reason that nobody bothers to read your rags any longer. There's a reason that when the polling data comes out and they ask the American people what they think of you, they think that you're on the level, I don't know, of a mosquito or a tick or a garden slug. Because you are. I mean, you're just as intrusive as all of those things. 8:14. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Telephone number if you'd like to reach our program this morning, 736-0300, 736-0300. Also, I'd like to add we'll have one of the medical pros from Tripp Family Medicine coming up between 8:30 and 9 o'clock this morning. And it looks like we're going to continue with your telephone calls from last week, just asking you what ails you. So this is your opportunity to speak with Dr. Tripp or one of his associates coming up in just a few minutes this morning, right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I got to tell you, I used to work inside mainstream media, and at the time, I would defend mainstream media. But over a period of 2 decades, I grew to the point where I couldn't do it any longer. I was talking to a local businessman about this yesterday, and he asked me, how did you stand it? And I got to the point I couldn't, which is why I embarked on a talk radio career, just to get away from all of that and to finally tell people what the truth is. But I did tell him something that I think that needs to be shared. I used to go to these AP awards every year, and I'd come back with an armload of awards they would give me for various stories that I'd covered and, in various categories. I didn't really care about those things. I'd give them to my dad. He'd take them down to the coffee shop and show them to all the guys that he worked with. And then he'd give them back to me, and I'd take them home, and I'd throw them up on top of the refrigerator, and they'd collect dust up there for a couple of years. They're in a box somewhere. I've got friends who frame them, and they're hanging all over their homes. I didn't care. I would win the things, and I'd stick them away somewhere and forget about it. I just like going to the banquet. That was the best part of it. You get a nice big juicy steak, get to hang out with some friends from some other cities, and then see them again next year. And then I left the particular market where I worked, and I went away for 6 years, and I worked in television news for 6 years in a couple of different other cities. And then I came back, and within a year in that very same market, I started hosting a radio talk show, and a conservative radio talk show. I would go to events. I never got invited any longer formally to media events, but the general manager at the radio station that I worked at would take me along to some of these. And I would see people that I used to rub elbows with, that I used to meet for breakfast. Back in the days when we used to go out and carouse at night, I would carouse with them. I would see them, and they would walk past me and act as if I was a stranger. They wouldn't even say hello. Because why? I pulled the veil back and we're telling the people the truth about what's going on here. But we don't need to do that any longer. After you see what Rachel Maddow did last night, you have a full understanding of just how bad the TDS is, the Trump derangement syndrome, how out of hand it is. And in a way, it almost negates what I'm doing every day. Because you don't need me any longer. It's so obvious. My role as an intermediary is becoming archaic. And maybe throughout talk radio. It's 8:17. We're at 34. There may be some rain in our weather coming up tomorrow. Just a quick note. The original projection was a high of only about 50, but now it looks like we're going to be warmer than that. Still rain expected. It won't hit 60 most likely tomorrow, but immediately afterward, we bounce right back. And we're back into warm weather over the next several days. So the parade weather looks great for the end of the week, in case you were wondering. The parade weather is going to be mid-60s, maybe even high 60s with plenty of sunshine. Put on the sunblock, I guess, if that be the case. And do want to point out that our check of the weather is brought to you by Mountain Home Auto Ranch. And for you liberals listening, that would be in Mountain Home. Just up the highway and just off the exit. I like to call it the candy store for adults. Bill Colley with you this morning, and a couple of other quick notes before we take a short break. I have this today. I wanted to mention my friend Russell. He dropped me a line yesterday during the show, and I thank him for doing that rather humorous line at our opening monologue during the course of the program yesterday. But Russell Smith is the man behind Western Visions, Inc. And I've been telling you the last few weeks about Western Visions, Inc. and the tour I took of a property that is nearly finished. A renovation. It's a high-end renovation. What does that mean? Well, they're not just going in and putting up some drywall and some paneling and some wallpaper. They went into this historic home in Cassia County, which is becoming a private lodge. It's owned by the artist Robert Moore. And I got to tour that place and really got to see the guts of the operation that's going on. And they're replacing beams, support beams. I mean, long support beams, big, heavy, long support beams. But they're trying to maintain the historic character of the building as well. And they're doing that. They're succeeding. And what they're going to do when they finish is they're going to have a beautiful new kitchen. They're going to have beautiful new bathrooms with all of the high-end amenities. Beautiful fireplace. It takes up nearly one entire wall in the house. I was impressed by that. Beautiful stone fireplace and LED lighting throughout the building. They can do that for you too. They can do it for your residential needs. They could even do it for a complete retrofit or just a couple of rooms if you like. And they can do it for a business as well. All you have to do is go to the website, western-visions.com. That's western-visions.com. It's 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. I was going to spend some time this morning, but I scrapped the idea of talking about the school votes from yesterday. It took place all across the state. But really the only reason to talk about those results would have been if something really incongruous had happened. It didn't. All of the measures, at least in the Magic Valley, seem to have sailed by a wide margin to approval. Now, if you are among those people out there who think I should make that a priority, I've said before, get your own show. But as I said, nothing incongruous happened there. The unexpected did not happen. But here's the interesting thing. I've made that offer. I wrote about it online, and I said, email me if you have an interest in doing it, that I was going to, Benito and I were going to pick someone from the crowd just to come in, and I was going to say an amateur, but we don't have licenses. Professionals are people who have licenses. And we don't have to be licensed any longer to yak on the radio. But I was going to pull a hat, name from a hat, and have somebody come in and be the guest host for half an hour some morning. Nobody took me up on it. So there you go. You could have set your own agenda. 34 right now. We're at 8:23. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I had an eye appointment yesterday. I was very pleased with the results. I should point that out. I've got a new pair of glasses on the way. I guess my next stop should be for hearing health. And speaking of that, I wanted to mention Dr. Christine Pickup this morning, a doctor of audiology at Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert. Now, why would you pick Mount Harrison Audiology? Well, independence. Mount Harrison Audiology is the only independent, locally owned hearing health care practice in southern Idaho. That means more choices for treatment than just one brand and lower cost. Trust your hearing to a certified audiologist. Call Mount Harrison Audiology for your appointment today. Dr. Pickup's number is 208-312-0957. That's 312-0957. Talking a little bit about liberals in the last segment of the program. Well, I referenced mainstream media, but Democrats, liberals, mainstream media, it all means the same thing in this current age. A couple of things I've got to reference because I don't think media is going to give this the attention it gave Ted Cruz some years ago when he was the man behind a government shutdown. Daily Signal has this headline: Schumer, who voted for border wall in 2006, threatens government shutdown over funding it. Because Chucky realizes, hey, if I could get a few more illegal aliens in my state, they'll vote Democrat for me. I'll tell them I'll give them everybody else's free lunch. Although the other people had to pay for their lunch. But I'll take it away from them and I'll give it to the people here illegally. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer threatening a government shutdown if funding for a border wall is included in a must-pass government spending bill. Funding for the federal government will run out, according to the writer, during the last week of April, and in order to avoid a government shutdown, Congress must pass a spending bill by April 28th. You realize if the federal government had no more money to spend, and they've been fudging the numbers, they've been spending, I saw this on TV the other night, government has been fudging the numbers, spending its reserves in order to help better claim that they need to raise the debt ceiling so they don't go over it beforehand. So they're trying to buy time by spending. Some of the biggest corporations in America have more cash on hand than your federal government does right now. Lord forbid Fat Boy over there in North Korea doesn't start launching missiles our direction because we may not be able to pay for replacements. Here's the thing. Schumer shuts down the government. Let's say that happens. First of all, it would give the states a chance to do what they're supposed to do, and that's take care of their own. And state governments can make their own decisions. But would media give it the same coverage? Because if you remember when Ted Cruz was behind this, and he was a Republican and therefore a bad dude according to mainstream media, he's a Christian, they also don't like him for that. Mainstream media kept showing you all of these pictures of crying people. I went to the national park and the fence was broken over here and I couldn't see the buffalo. Or I went down to the monument and they put a barrier around it and it's all Ted Cruz's fault and the Republicans are mean. Yes, more stories today about mean Republicans here at ABC, NBC, and CBS News. Now, the following mean Republicans are, and then they'd list them off. Meanwhile, the very good Democrats who are out there trying to kill your babies in the wombs have an idea. They're going to spend the country into oblivion and you'll be allowed to see the buffalo. That's what's going to happen. This time around, it's going to be how wonderful Chuck Schumer is protecting all of those people who want to come to this country and feed off the beast. And then I have this. Speaking of Ted Cruz, Washington Free Beacon. At southern border, Pelosi visits immigrants. Cruz visits law enforcement. Both Senator Ted Cruz and House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi visited the United States southern border in the beginning of 2017, but they met with two different groups of people. Pelosi went out to an illegal immigrant encampment. These are people who'll be deported. She's trolling for votes. Well, if you'd only move to San Francisco, we'll make sure that we can find you a lover and we'll give you a free lunch. And then you can vote for me and send me back to Washington over and over and over again. I was going to retire if Hillary got elected, but then I realized I had to stand and fight Donald Trump and help burn the American flag. Ted Cruz, meanwhile, he actually has been, he went and he visited just a few weeks ago with border agents. As it turns out, Ted Cruz, being a senator from Texas, often goes and visits with the border agents when he's not in Washington, so he can keep tabs on just how critical the situation happens to be. Ms. Pelosi, by the way.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it away from the fog of the controversy.
And your little dog, too.
She actually tweeted yesterday asking people to tell their Obamacare success stories. If we get some time in the next hour of the program, I'll share some of the responses. Let's just say it wasn't what the Wicked Witch of the West was looking for. And likely that experiment will be scrapped and she'll go looking for some other way to try and fool the American people. We've got a short break. Dr. Jonathan Tripp coming up in just a moment on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're at 36. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. Hey, quick note. We are looking at a lot of really nice weather over the next week. Have been looking at it the last few days. But as Benito was telling me the other day, there's one more snowstorm probably still left with us somewhere. And that means a cold night at least, and maybe a cold day too, or a couple of them. If you've got problems heating your home, it may be you need to have someone look at the efficiency of your furnace. You need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric in Burley. They'll come out and they'll get the job done right. They'll get it done right the first time. Problem-free, cozy winters found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. The telephone number 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers.